Horn of My Salvation, a Havoc in Wyoming short story. By Millie Copper. Digital narration. Rebecca lifted her ball cap and adjusted her ponytail as Cliff heaved another bag of horse feed into the utility trailer. They'd parked at the edge of Billings Farm and Ranch supply lot, taking up 3 spaces. "That's the last of it," Cliff said, his handlebar mustache lifting with his satisfied grin. "We're set. For now." Rebecca checked her phone out of habit, still no service. Weird. Her phone always worked here. "You really think we need all this?" She took a step to the side so she could see into the cab of the pickup truck. There was Duke, looking at them, ears high and tongue out. "Give me a minute, baby," she said. "Better to have it and not need it." Cliff secured the trailer gate, giving it a test shake. "Besides, with guests coming in a few weeks, we'll be happy we bought it now so we don't have to run off to the big city while entertaining." Rebecca nodded, but her stomach tightened. Guests, their first real guests at Prospect Creek Dude Ranch. The thought thrilled and terrified her in equal measure, maybe even more than the events unfolding around the country. At least life was still normal in their area. They'd left home before dawn, wanting to beat any crowds. The news had been getting worse all week. The airplanes crashed on Thursday night. Commercial jets falling from the sky in 5 different cities followed immediately by some kind of on-ground attacks once the first responders arrived. Yesterday, many bridges exploded. The Golden Gate, the Brooklyn Bridge, dozens of others. The footage had been surreal, apocalyptic. Those who lived in areas affected by the bridge explosions packed up and left. Unable to fly due to grounded air travel, they filled their cars with whatever they could and took off. Most didn't plan it too well and left with nowhere specific to go. Because so many people had the same idea, the streets and interstates jammed. Gas stations couldn't handle the demand. Hotels filled. Restaurants and grocery stores emptied. It was chaos. Rebecca didn't understand what they thought they were doing by leaving perfectly fine homes, but thousands upon thousands did it anyway. Driven by fear or something, people made poor choices, stranding themselves in strange towns or along the freeways, stalling traffic. But when she and Cliff reached Billings this morning, things had seemed almost normal. Some traffic, sure, but nothing really beyond normal. They had noticed several semi-trucks parked along the edge on the westbound side, slowing traffic, but she expected that to be resolved before they headed back. It was certainly nothing like the jammed interstates they'd seen on television. Cliff had insisted they come today. Had insisted they stock up on supplies just in case. And Rebecca had learned not to argue when he got that look in his eyes. Besides, Wyoming and Montana weren't the same as those places on television. "One more stop," Cliff said, rubbing his hands together. "Grocery store. Take care of that and head home." "We've already gone to the grocery store, Cliff." He shook his head. "We went to the membership store. There are items I want from Supermart." Stopping at the big grocery store had become part of their routine whenever they came this way. Their new home and business sat in the mountains near the Montana border, tucked inside Wyoming, and the place embodied the best of both worlds. She loved being able to say they lived in Wyoming because there was something almost magical about the state she now called her own. Still, watching Cliff load fence posts, wire, and feed, she wondered if he was being paranoid. Seriously, the world was strange. Weird, even, but it wasn't like it was the end of the world. Terrorist attacks had happened before, and life always returned to normal. Rebecca opened the passenger door, and Duke bounded out, doing a happy circle around her legs before moving to a patch of weeds by the trailer hitch. "Good boy," she murmured, scratching behind his ears after he did his business. "You've been so patient all day." Duke looked up at her with his warm brown eyes, and her heart squeezed. They'd found him 4 years ago, a scraggly, barely weaned puppy abandoned at a rest stop. Cliff had scooped him up without hesitation, and Duke had been their shadow ever since. "Come on, buddy." She opened the truck door, and Duke leaped in, settling into the back seat as he usually did. Cliff started the engine and pulled out of the lot. "Last stop, then we're done." "Promises, promises," Rebecca snickered. The grocery store parking lot made Rebecca's breath catch. Cars everywhere, parked at odd angles, some blocking the fire lanes. A woman was screaming at a teenager in a store vest near the entrance. 2 men shoved each other near a shopping cart corral. "Maybe we should skip it," Rebecca said, one hand on Duke's collar. The dog was on edge, sensing her unease. "Maybe." Cliff's jaw set in that stubborn line she knew too well. I don't know. It's not that bad. I see a spot on the edge. We'll be quick. In and out. Big enough for the trailer? Yep, it'll work. He found a spot that wasn't even part of the grocery store, but belonged to the box store sharing the same lot. Great, Cliff. It's about half a mile to the store. Oh, come on. You're always telling me how you need to stay in shape. His tone was teasing and light, yet his face held tension as he scanned the lot. Good thing we got an early start today. We'll be home with our feet up before it gets too crazy. They cracked the windows for Duke. The air was still cool, proof they'd been right to start early. If the weather warmed up, they would move him to the truck bed, where they had secured his crate. We'll be fast, I promise, Rebecca told the dog, giving him one more scratch. The trek to the store was a gauntlet of rushing cars and blaring horns. A lone cart sat with its front wheels on the sidewalk, its back wheels in the lot. Let's take this, Cliff said, grabbing the cart. It wobbled. Leave it, Cliff, Rebecca insisted. He shook his head. Might not be any inside. Better than nothing. The parking lot was awful, and inside was worse. The checkout line snaked back into the aisles. People threw items into carts without looking at prices, their faces tight with something Rebecca didn't want to name, panic or fear. Cliff, are you sure this is smart? Probably not. Stick close. She shook her head. Best we split up, each take a cart. He grabbed the last cart in the cart bay. When she saw it rolled smoothly, Rebecca reached for it. You get the broken one, she said. It'll make me crazy. Anything for you, babe, he told her with a wink. He sobered. I'm still not sure we should split up. You get the things you said you needed and couldn't buy at the last place. I'm going to toiletries. Okay, 15 minutes, we meet in produce. Deal? Deal. She grabbed a cart and they split up. She was trying to find the toothpaste she preferred when the announcement came. Attention shoppers. The voice over the intercom was strained, barely controlled. Due to technical difficulties, we temporarily cannot process credit or debit card transactions. We apologize for the inconvenience. A ripple moved through the store as the voice continued. We can accept cash only. If you don't have cash, please bring your cart to the front and we'll handle returning the items to the shelves for you. Fat lot of good, that'll do me, a woman down the aisle yelled. Rebecca found Cliff in the canned goods aisle, his cart half full. Did you hear? She asked. Cash only. He pulled out his wallet, counted quickly. I've got 120, you? She dug through her purse. 83. $203. Cliff looked at his cart before glancing at hers. You don't have much. She shook her head. I had a few more things, but put them back. There was no reason to tell him she'd decided against the hair mask and teeth-whitening strips. I have about, $80 worth of stuff in my cart? She peered at the cans. Somewhere around there? I have about 30. She pointed to the giant package of toilet paper. We bought TP at the membership store, but this kind's better for septic tanks. I thought it might be good for the cabins, but I could put it back. Leave it. Toilet paper is always a good idea. Said by the man who uses his sock when hiking. He opened his mouth to respond when the lights flickered. Now what? Someone yelled. What kind of rinky-dink store is this? Someone else called out. The lights flickered again before going out. Emergency lighting kicked on, casting everything in a yellow glow. Voices rose throughout the store, some angry, some scared. Let's go find out what's happening, Cliff said, already pushing his cart toward the front. Rebecca followed with hers, navigating around other shoppers doing the same. Near customer service, Cliff spotted an employee. A man with sweat under his arms and looking like he wanted to be anyplace else. A man was yelling at the worker. A woman stood behind him, hands wrapped around the cart handle. The employee seemed to be keeping his cool, but Rebecca noticed the tension in his jaw and the way he held his hands by his side, clenched tight. So there's nothing you will do? The angry man's voice dropped an octave as he took a step forward. Everyone is in the same boat. The credit cards won't work. Now, with the regular power out and only emergency on, the registers are down. Write them a check, honey, a woman said. The angry man shot her a venomous look. Don't tell me what to do. Really? You're going to take that attitude with me? The angry man started to respond, but she raised her hand, cutting him off. She turned to the employee. I'm going to write a check for $150. I shop here all the time, you know that, now don't you? Color crept up the employee's neck. Yes, ma'am, I'm aware. $150. She had her purse open and was taking out a pen. I'm going to lose my job. Better than my punching you in the nose, the angry man said, taking another step toward the employee. The employee took a step back and raised his hands. Write the check, I'm done. Cliff shot Rebecca a look and grabbed his wallet. Here's a $100 bill. These carts. We good? Cliff shoved the money toward him. The man looked at their cart before shifting his gaze to the growing mob of angry customers near the darkened registers. Behind them, someone was shouting about their rights. Yeah, the man said finally. Yeah, fine, take it and go. Cliff didn't give him time to reconsider. He handed over the bill and they headed for the doors, moving fast but not quite running. That was nuts, Rebecca said when they were outside. Totally. Here, we need only one cart. Put it all in mine. They transferred the few items over and moved, the wheel wobbling. We chose the wrong cart, Rebecca said. We should switch it. No time, let's get out of here. The parking lot had deteriorated in the 20 minutes they'd been inside. A fender bender blocked one lane. Abandoned carts sat in the middle of other lanes. People pushed past each other, shouting and arguing. This is out of control. Where's the police? Let's get to the truck. Cliff increased his speed, the wobbly wheel protesting. They were both breathing hard by the time they reached the end of the parking lot. Check on Duke, Cliff said. I'm going to put the groceries in the trailer. Duke whined from inside the truck. I know, buddy. Rebecca opened the door. Stay put. I don't want you to get out here. Those people are crazy. She motioned back toward the grocery store with her chin. Cliff opened the driver's door. Let's go, now. They climbed in, Duke immediately pressing against Rebecca's leg. She could feel him trembling. It's okay, she told him. But her own hands were shaking as she tried her phone again. Still nothing, not even one bar. Cliff navigated out of the lot, taking a back route to avoid the worst of the traffic. Is the internet issue isolated and the power outage? Rebecca asked, watching storefronts pass by. Several were dark, their parking lots full of confused-looking people. No cellular service. I should have it here. I always do. Maybe it's only this area. Can we go somewhere else and use our cards? Get more groceries? I'd like to, Cliff said, slowing for a traffic light that wasn't working. He treated it as a four-way stop, looking both ways before proceeding. Especially because the internet being out makes me wonder if there's something else happening. Something else like what? I don't know. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The plane crashes, the bridges, people stuck on the roads, and now the internet? It sounds planned. You sound paranoid, honey. She gave him a smile, shaking her head. This was why they were here, after all. Cliff's paranoia, his constant what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. She'd have been delighted to stay at their place and work on the ranch, rather than driving almost 2 hours for possibly unnecessary supplies. But God had blessed them with the perfect property, hadn't he? Prospect Creek Dude Ranch, not far from Bakerville, their dream home. Of course, they'd also taken on a mortgage that made her wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, and they'd used every penny of the inheritance she'd received after her parents died. She pushed that thought away, as she always did. The traffic lights ahead were all dark. A string of stores sat closed, windows black. I think we're done, Cliff said quietly. Time to go home. Rebecca nodded, scratching Duke's ears. The dog had stopped trembling, still pressed warm and solid against her side. She pulled out her phone again, more out of habit than hope. Her social media app was showing an old feed from yesterday, frozen in time. She tried to refresh. Nothing. Tried to look at comments. Nothing happened. I bet people are freaking out, she said, forcing a laugh. If they can't get on social media, whatever will they do? But even as she said it, she felt the bitter touch of hypocrisy. She was one of those people, wasn't she? Taking much too long breaks to scroll when she should be painting cabins or fixing fences or doing any of the 100 productive things that needed doing at the ranch. She even checked her phone when atop her horse. Rebecca met Cliff at a dude ranch outside Sheridan, one of those resort places where she worked as a summer wrangler, taking guests on trail rides through the mountains. Raised on a small Iowa cattle ranch, she learned to ride before walking. When her folks sold the ranch the winter she graduated high school, she found the seasonal job at the Sheridan place and fell in love, not only with Cliff, but with Wyoming itself. Cliff was a Wyoming native, his dad a hired hand on a large cattle ranch in the eastern part of the state. He'd worked there too, starting young. It meant he knew horses and cattle and the land in a way she was still learning. But he'd appreciated that she wasn't afraid of hard work, that she understood what ranch life really meant. They'd fallen hard that summer. By the end of the season, they knew they'd spend their lives together. When her parents died in a car accident 3 years later, a drunk driver on a rural highway, the grief had been crushing, but the inheritance had given Rebecca and Cliff a chance. Last year, when she turned 27 and the money became available, they'd found Prospect Creek. Individual cabins, a massive lodge, horse barn, corrals, and 200 acres backing up to National Forest. It had fallen into disrepair. The previous owner had died, and his heirs were not interested in maintaining it. They'd even sold off a large section of the timber for cash, but Cliff had seen the potential. They'd poured everything into it, not only money, sweat, equity, 6 months of brutal renovation work and counting, but they were doing it. The work would be ongoing, but their first guests were due the week of Independence Day, friends of friends, testing the waters. The local ski team had already booked cabins for winter training, working with the ski lodge across the road. Next summer, they'd have more horses, more cattle, a semi-proper dude ranch offering trail rides through some of the most beautiful country in Wyoming, avoiding the clear-cut section, of course. It was everything they'd dreamed of. A worry struck her, sharp and cold. What if the power outage isn't only in Billings? Cliff slowed at another dead traffic light, treating it as a 4-way stop. Meaning, what if it's some kind of widespread outage, a major blackout or something? She reached for the radio knob and started working through stations. Static, nothing but static. Try AM, Cliff said. She did. More static, broken by bursts of noise that might have been voices but were too distorted to understand. Shouldn't there be emergency broadcasts? Her voice sounded small even to her own ears. They were on familiar streets now, driving toward the interstate that would take them home. Every business they passed was dark. Every parking lot was full of people standing around looking confused or angry or scared. Traffic was increasing, and travelers were impatient. Duke whined and pressed closer to Rebecca. "It's okay, buddy," she murmured, wrapping her arm around him. He smelled of dog and sunshine and home. "We're going home." Her voice shook, and she knew Cliff heard it. Duke must have sensed it too. He turned and licked her cheek. They reached the interstate. The light traffic from earlier in the morning was now tight and slow-moving. Traffic backed up on the on-ramp. "I don't think we should take the interstate," Cliff said, moving into the other lane. "Let's weave our way around. It'll take longer, but might be better." "Okay," she agreed, looking at the bumper-to-bumper traffic that was more like some enormous city than Billings. They weren't the only ones avoiding the interstate. Every road had heavy traffic. They'd been driving for about 15 minutes when they saw the line of stopped vehicles ahead. Not slow traffic, not even heavy traffic. Just stopped. At least a dozen cars sat motionless on the 2-lane highway, no flashing lights, no visible accident. There was no oncoming traffic either, simply a stopped line of cars. "Should we turn around?" Rebecca asked, turning in her seat to get a glimpse behind them. A car was close to the trailer's bumper. Cliff shook his head as he slowed and put the truck in park, but left it running. "Stay here. Lock the doors. I'll go see what's happening." "Cliff, lock the doors." He was already out, jogging toward the front of the line. Rebecca hit the lock button, one hand on Duke's collar. The dog was tense again, a low growl building in his chest. Through the windshield, she watched Cliff disappear. A minute passed, 2, 5. Her phone was still showing no signal. She tried the radio again, static. Then she saw them. 4 men were walking in the oncoming lane. The men carried rifles and wore pistols on their hips. Not an unusual sight in these parts, but something about it was unsettling. They moved with purpose, stopping at each car. One would lean into a driver's window, talking. The people inside didn't move, didn't get out, didn't drive away, merely sat there. They were too far away for her to see their faces, but somehow she knew they'd been threatened. "Cliff," she whispered, "where are you?" Duke's growl got louder. Cliff appeared, jogging back along the shoulder. When he reached the truck, sweat beaded on his forehead, his expression hard. He yanked open the door. "We're getting out of here." "What?" He threw the truck into reverse, cranking the wheel hard. A horn blared, followed by the crunch of the trailer hitting the car behind them. He shoved it into drive and lurched forward. There wasn't much room to maneuver, but he worked the wheel, fighting to get them free of the jam. "Cliff, what's happening?" Roads blocked up ahead. They're robbing people, taking cars, supplies. He twisted to look as he again reversed, tires spitting gravel as he pulled onto the shoulder, taking everything. We should call the police. With what? He worked at making space to turn around. The phones are dead, Rebecca. That's when she saw the men running toward them. Go, she screamed. Cliff slammed the pedal down, clipping the car ahead of them. The jolt gave him enough room to slide onto the shoulder. The trailer fishtailed on the gravel before the tires found the pavement. They surged forward, back the way they had come. Duke was barking now, scrambling on the bench seat. In the side mirror, Rebecca watched the men fall behind. One of them raised something. Her side mirror exploded. Duke yelped. Rebecca screamed, throwing her arms over her head, preparing for another shot. Hold on, Cliff's voice was tight with fear. He gunned the truck, resulting in a fishtail Rebecca wasn't sure he was going to come out of. When he did, she twisted in her seat, trying to peer around the trailer. Are they following? I don't think so, but Cliff didn't slow down. Duke was shaking against Rebecca's side. She ran her hands over him, checking for injuries. He seemed in one piece. It's okay, she whispered. It's okay, buddy. But her own heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. We need a different route, Cliff said, looking ahead for a side road. He was breathing hard, knuckles white on the wheel. He slammed on the brakes. An old pickup skidded to a stop from an intersecting road with an SUV right on its tail. A third vehicle slid sideways, cutting them off. Rebecca watched in horror as men spilled out, dropping into defensive positions with rifles pointed directly at them. Are they with the others? Must be, somehow working together. Cliff shifted the truck into reverse, eyes on the side mirror. A word he rarely used escaped his lips. What is it? She asked. Get down, Cliff said. His voice had gone eerily calm. Rebecca, get down and don't move. Cliff. Do it now. Rebecca slid down in the seat, pulling Duke with her. The dog was growling again, that continuous rumble deep in his chest. She kept her eyes on Cliff. He had his hands on the steering wheel. From her position, she couldn't see anything, but the sounds were growing louder. An engine. Close. They've blocked us in, Cliff said. A face appeared at his window. A big man with a full beard. He tapped on the glass with something metal. Roll it down, he said. Cliff didn't move. The man tapped again, harder. Roll down the window or I'll break it. With his lips barely moving, Cliff said, Be ready. He lowered the window halfway. Nice truck, the man said, leaning in. Nice trailer, too. Looks like you've been shopping. We're trying to get home. Cliff's voice was steady, controlled. We don't want any trouble. Nobody wants trouble. The man smiled. But see, here's the thing. The world's gone upside down. Power's out. Internet's toast. Phones don't work. And people like you, he gestured at their loaded trailer. People who have things we need. Take the trailer, Cliff said. Take whatever you want. Let us go. Oh, we will take the trailer. The man's smile widened. The truck, too. Gas is about to be worth more than gold, friend, and I'm thinking you've got cash on you. Credit cards don't work anymore, but cash? Cash is king now. We don't have much, Cliff said. We spend it all at the stores. I'll give you what's left. You sure will. The man opened Cliff's door. Out of the truck, slowly. Please, my wife. Out, now. Cliff looked at Rebecca. In that brief glance, she saw everything. Love, fear. I'm sorry. Goodbye. No, she whispered. Cliff's hand moved to the gear shift. The truck began rolling backward. Hands grabbed him and yanked him from the seat. Rebecca watched him struggle, trying to hold on, but they ripped him away. He disappeared from view, and the shouting started, men yelling and cursing. Cliff cried out in pain. The truck kept rolling until it slammed into the vehicle behind them with a crunch of metal. Rebecca held Duke tight against her on the floor, the dog trembling under her grip. The shouting grew louder, closer. Someone climbed into the driver's seat and hit the brakes. Well, hello there, pretty lady, Duke growled, showing his teeth. Better make him mind. The man touched a pistol in a holster on his chest. I like dogs, but not if they're a threat. Duke, enough, her voice came out hoarse. A knock sounded at her door. It's locked, a voice called. The man in the driver's seat motioned toward Rebecca. Get up, darlin'. We're gonna get out now. Rebecca shook her head as tears stung her eyes. Don't mess with me. She clicked open the lock. The door opened. Duke exploded. 70 pounds of furious dog launched past Rebecca, teeth bared. The man at the door screamed, stumbling backward. Duke caught his arm, shaking viciously. Get it off me. Everything happened at once. Cliff's voice cut through it all, fierce and fighting. He hadn't given up. Others were shouting. The man outside was screaming, trying to fight off Duke. Rebecca scrambled from her spot, hitting pavement with a thud, and made for the front of the pickup. The gunshot cracked through the air. Rebecca froze. In the sudden silence, Duke whimpered. No, she whispered. From her place near the hood, she couldn't see Duke but could see Cliff. He and the bearded man were on the ground, the man on top, knife in his hand. No. The knife went in. Cliff's body jerked. Blood spread across his shirt. Cliff! She ran, grabbed the man's shoulders, yanked, clawed at him to get him off, to reach Cliff. Arms locked around her waist from behind, dragging her back. She kicked, thrashing, screaming Cliff's name. That's enough, pretty lady. You're making it harder on yourself. Cliff, please! The big man stood. Blood covered his shirt. He looked down at Cliff as if he were an inconvenience, something that had wasted his time. Cliff lay still. Should have simply given me the truck. The man wiped his knife on his jeans. A sound tore from Rebecca's throat. Duke whined, the sound coming from somewhere behind the truck, high and pained. Got the dog, someone called out. Please, Rebecca begged, still struggling against whoever was holding her. Please, my husband. Your husband's dead. The big man looked at her with cold eyes. Should have cooperated. Someone shut her up. Wait. Pain exploded across the back of her head. The pavement came up fast. Voices pulled her back. Pain came with consciousness, her head throbbing, chest aching with every breath. When she tried to open her eyes, light stabbed straight into her brain. Something warm and wet was licking her hand. She forced her eyes open. Duke. He was lying next to her, his head resting on her arm, tongue gently lapping at her fingers. Blood had soaked through what looked like a torn t-shirt wrapped around his back leg. How was Duke here? Where were the men? She'd heard the gunshot, heard Duke whine. Duke, she whispered. Her throat was raw, the word barely audible. His tail thumped against whatever surface they were on. She was in the back of a vehicle, a minivan, the seats folded down. She was lying on blankets that smelled like laundry detergent. Duke was beside her, brown eyes fixed on her face with heartbreaking devotion. None of this made sense. The men had knocked her out. She fell onto the pavement. Why wasn't she still there? Who put her in this van? She's awake! A child's voice, high and excited. Rebecca tried to sit up. The world spun. She collapsed back down, gasping. Don't move, a woman's voice said from somewhere up front. We're almost to the hospital. Hospital. The word floated through her consciousness. Hospital meant doctors, medicine, help. Cliff. The memory hit, the blade going in, the blood. My husband, she tried to say, but it came out as a croak, barely human. How? Just rest, the woman said, her voice thick with something pity. Fear. Save your strength. Rebecca turned her head, the movement sending fresh waves of pain through her skull. A woman was leaning over the back seat, looking at her, older than her, with exhausted eyes and hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Next to her, a little girl with brown pigtails stared at Rebecca. Strangers, complete strangers. How did they find her? Had they seen what happened? She doesn't look good, the woman said quietly, probably to someone in the driver's seat that Rebecca couldn't see. Is she going to die, Mommy? The little girl asked. I don't know, honey. The woman's voice cracked. I don't know. What about her dog? He's hurt, but he'll be okay. Will we take care of him? The woman, the mother, let out a long, shaky sigh. I guess we will, until we can figure things out. Rebecca tried to speak, to ask what happened to the men, to ask how she got here, to tell them Duke's name, to thank them, but she hurt too much. Every breath was agony, like someone was sitting on her ribs. Something was wrong, more than being hit on the head. Bad hurt. She would not make it to the hospital. Duke licked her hand again, and she moved her fingers, scratching behind his ear the way he liked. Good boy. Such a good boy. The edges of her vision were darkening. She could feel her heartbeat too fast, too weak, fluttering like a bird trying to escape her chest. But Duke would be okay. This woman would take care of him. Rebecca could hear it in her voice, that note of exhausted compassion. She would take Duke home, take care of him, make sure he recovered from his wound, give him food and water and a safe place to sleep. The little girl would love him. And Cliff? She couldn't think about Cliff, couldn't let herself picture his face, his smile, the way his mustache twitched when he was trying not to laugh. Couldn't think about the ranch, the cabins waiting for guests who would never come, the horses in the pasture along the creek, the life they were building together from dreams and so much love. Rebecca closed her eyes. Duke's breathing was steady beside her, his warmth pressed against her side. Even through the pain, she could feel him solid and real and alive. She imagined him running through the meadows at Prospect Creek, chasing rabbits he'd never catch, rolling in the tall grass. She imagined Cliff laughing, calling Duke back to the lodge porch for dinner. She imagined all the years they'd never have, all the guests they'd never welcome, all the sunrises over the mountains they'd never see together. But Cliff had something better now. He was home, really home, seeing Jesus with his own eyes, whole and healed and worshiping. The ranch, the dreams, the life they'd planned, all of it faded next to that, and she'd be with him soon. The darkness was closing in now, gentle and inevitable. She was smiling. Duke was safe. They would care for him. He wouldn't be alone. Cliff was waiting with Jesus. He was waiting for her.